Hello and welcome back to this channel. So today what I'm going to do is to just go through the basic installation of our programming tool Visual Studio Code. Now Visual Studio Code is a free piece of software. It's an excellent piece of software for editing code, and what we're going to be using it for in the next videos is editing HTML and CSS for our websites. Okay, so let's get to it now. I've got up here a link, a URL. This is where you need to go to download the software. It's all completely free, by the way. And we basically just need to go to this website. Now, I've already got it open on the screen here. It should cleverly determine which computer you've got, whether it's a Windows PC, different versions, a Mac, and so on. And it's already telling me that I'm going to download the Mac Universal version. So I'm going to go right ahead and do that. As you can see, it wants me to put that in my downloads folder, which it has done almost. It's just taking a few moments, and now it's got there in my downloads folder. Now, what you must not do is to run the software from the downloads folder. We need to put it in a very specific place on the Mac. If we are actually using our own Mac, then we can of course put the application wherever we want, in the general applications folder, if you like. If you're using a shared computer like that at the university, then what you need to do is to put this into your user folder, which of course you are permitted to do. So how do we go about doing that? Let me just shrink this down and also hide this link here, which by the way I will put a link in the notes below this video for that link. Now what we need to do is to go to the Finder menu, which is up here, and we need to go to Go. Under this menu you can see the list of things that you can go into, and I'm going to go to my home folder. Now the home folder is essentially where all of the standard things are saved for you as a user on this computer. And as I say, if it's your own computer, then you're likely just to have one user folder. If you're using a shared computer, then obviously you've got your own user folder, other people have got their own user folder. So whatever you do in this folder is not visible to anybody else if you're using a shared computer. So what I need to do now is to actually put a folder in here, and I'm going to do this via this little icon here, new folder. And I'm going to call this folder. Now it's very important how you name this folder. We want a capital A, Applications. So this is your own personal applications folder. All being well, you should see that little icon appear there if it's named correctly. And I have named that correctly. Good. Okay, so go into that folder. Nothing in there as yet, but now what we can do is to take from the downloads folder, we can now drag that application into that folder. Now that's ready to go. We can now start using that. But there's just one little tip I want to give you for generally whenever you're using the Mac. And this is a setting for you on a shared computer as well. I advise you to make sure that you can see the extensions to all of the files. So what I mean by that is this, for example, this Visual Studio Code is a program, it's an app. And what we actually need really is to show that it's an app. And the way that we do that is to have an extension to the file name, which is there, but it's being hidden at the moment. How do we go about changing that? Well, go to the Finder Preferences. Just let me bring this a little bit closer onto the center of the screen. And I'm going to go to my Advanced menu. And then what I'm going to do is to tick Show all file name extensions, and as you can see immediately we get the .app appearing in the file name. Now that's going to be generally very useful to you, as you will see later on when we're starting to look at doc files, JPEG files, GIF files, HTML files, etc., etc., because then we can actually see the extension to the file name, and it gives us a much stronger clue as to what type of file that actually is. Okay, so now let's get started then. I'm going to actually run Visual Studio Code and just run through some very basics, just how to configure it for our own purposes. Double click on it, and like all applications these days, to the first time that you run them, you're likely to come across an item that's saying, that it's verifying, as you can see. It also asks me, do I really want to open this? Am I sure? Blah, blah, blah. Security issues, in other words. Let's open this then. Now, what we actually get to begin with is a welcome screen. So we can, well, read the welcome screen by all means. You can actually choose different themes. So how this looks. I mean, at the moment it's using the dark theme, as you can see, out of the 3 that you've got available to you. But you can also choose other color themes as well by downloading one of those themes as an extension. I'm going to stick with the dark theme at the moment, but what I want to do is to show you how you can add extensions to VS Code. One of the great things about it is that it's fully extensible. People can write extensions and freely distribute them. And if we go to this little icon over here on the left-hand side, extensions, click on there, and then what we're going to get are all the extensions that are available. As you can see, there's a very long scrolling list here. I'm going to recommend that you put in a few extensions. And the first one that I'm going to suggest is called Live Server. It's actually already in the list because it's not very far down the list, which I think actually, if you can see there the way it's listed by popular, the most popular. And that's one of the most popular ones. So I'm going to go for that. So Live Server, this is how we install it. Simply click Install. You can read about it if you like. But essentially what Live Server does is it actually allows you to run a web server on your computer while you're editing, for example, your HTML and your CSS when you're building your web pages. So what we can actually do is to see live, we can see immediate changes when we change the CSS, when we change the styling, you can see that immediately happening. And that's really very, very useful, so you don't have to keep switching back and forth to a web browser. The other one that's quite handy is again, none of these things are essential, of course, but Prettier is a really good one because what that does is it actually organizes the content of your code so that you actually have clues as to how the code is built up. That is to say, you're going to get tabbed lines. It actually structures the look of the code, if you like. It doesn't make any changes to the code, but it structures it so that it actually looks and makes it a lot easier to read the code. You'll see what I mean later on when we look at some HTML, for example. Now, another one that we're going to find useful at some point is because we're going to be using GitHub quite often for our content. GitHub is where we store our repository. And if we use an extension called GitHub in this program in VS Code, it will allow us to communicate with the code that we're storing in our repository. You'll see what I mean when we come to use it later on, but I'm just going to install it right now anyway, and I'm just going to search for this one because it's not coming up straight away. It's called GitHub pull requests and issues, and I'm going to install that. We don't need to necessarily use it right away, but it's worth having. You'll see a bit later on. Okay, so that just about does it. We've now got our program VS Code installed, and we can now move on to the next stages, which is how to write HTML and CSS with it. Okay, thank you.